Okay, welcome out to Trading Justice, episode number 214. Trading Justice is presented by TackleTrading.com. Get in the game, obviously. If you're not a member over there, get over there and use the promo code Justice15 to get your first 15 days for free and test out the pro membership and see what all of the members in our community and our team are doing over there in Tackle Trading. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about the foreign exchange markets, specifically the banking cycles and how the 24-hour market ties together. We're going to go through a strategy called the bank open trade and talk about how a trader might approach a certain time of day and that kind of thing. Trading justice is something we take a lot of pride in. We're very grateful for each and every one of you out there, our loyal listeners and our community. If you've not done this yet, go over to iTunes and leave us a review. We always do like those, and we might read it on the podcast in the future. Without further ado, I'm bring in my brother and my co-host here, Matt. How you doing today?
Doing good. How you doing, T?
Pretty good, pretty good. Kind of a gray, rainy day here in Utah in spring. It's one of the reasons why I didn't play baseball all the way through my childhood. I kind of gave up on it because it always got cold and wet and windy. But other than that, markets are interesting and trading's interesting, but fairly well. What do you focus on out there with the market, Matt? The French elections over the weekend. We've got volatility in stock prices, all kinds of things. What's catching your eye?
Well, obviously the French elections from last night came in, and we don't know we don't have finality yet with that, but we do have a two-horse race now, and the markets cheered it. A little more moderate response to the elections in France brings in some degree of certainty, I think, and so. Now that we're down to the two candidates, and the more moderate one got I think it was like 23% to 21%. There was a total of, I believe, 11 candidates. So 9 candidates are gone down to the final two in the markets. Really liked what they saw. The Dow, the S&P both up about 1% right now. They've sold off a little bit since the actual open, but just a little bit of profit taking, I would say. The interesting one was gold, though. Gold down pretty hard initially, silver down pretty hard initially, and also the dollar index down initially. So, you had the dollar down, you had the gold down, you had silver down, which is typically not a common response. But dollar sitting at a support level at 99.10. I think with what I'm seeing on the charts out of all those three, I think gold a little bit of overreaction to the sell-off in gold and responding fairly favorably since the market actually opened, showing a little bit of a hammer candle.
Yeah, very, very interesting electoral process they have there in France. Matt, you and I are old political science students, so we learned about parliamentary procedure and how the parliament will kind of is very different than here in the U.S. And they're gotten down to two candidates. I think the market is looking for clarity there. Polling data and all that kind of stuff. I will say this. I mean, we've had two recent elections, Matt, that who knows what could end up shaking out. But these two candidates, I don't know everything about them, but what I have read and what I've kind of surmised, and maybe you can help me understand it, is that the one guy's a globalist and the other guy's a nationalist. And the big concept, the big debate is essentially what we've seen with Brexit and the U.S. Does France want to put somebody in that's going to take them out of the EU or not? Is the data is showing that the one globalist guy, the Mac, is
Globalist.
it Macron? Is that his name?
It's Macron's his name, and he's a centrist and a globalist, and it's what we've been seeing across the entire eurozone. It's what we saw with Brexit. It's what we saw in terms of Donald Trump and the election with Donald Trump. The populist national movements, the isolationist movements, versus the global movements. And obviously, with Brexit, the populists won out, and in the U.S., the populists won out. That's not something I support. I do believe that the more we embrace global economics, the more we tie each other together, the less war we will have, the more economic expansion we will have. We need other countries to thrive, and so and I think that's what the market responded with today was okay. We've seen that populist movement for the last really kind of 2, 3 years as the European immigration problem has kind of hit its head, especially coming out of Syria and whatnot. So I think the global markets The Japanese markets responded very favorably. The European markets the same, and now the U.S. markets, showing that we we support peace, we support global economics, and we support more certainty and not less. So I think it was an interesting market response to the French elections, but this is not a done deal. I mean, they still have another round off. I believe May 7th is a round off, but Macron, it looks like the latest polling suggests that he's going to win in a fairly easy landslide. I think the latest was 62 to 38%. Macron was going to win, so that's why they were so favorably positive to the market today.
Yeah, very, very interesting stuff. And, obviously volatility in the currency market then translates into the stock market. And we've talked intermarket analysis, enough on these podcasts to where I think everybody understands out there that one market will impact another. So when I wake up this morning and I see the U.S. stock market up pretty big, pretty healthy, over 1%, Matt, that just is a direct reflection of those dominoes coming into place. As we look at the stock market itself, the S&P is stuck in a range. To me, I'm still very neutral as it's bouncing between 2330 and 2400. It's been that way for a month and a half. Any chance this can trigger a breakout? As
Well,
we
if you're looking at the S&P 500 itself, it did break out of a triangle. You were having decreasing resistance zones and horizontal support zones. Little flag pattern that it did break out of today. A lot of times that leads to continuation. However, again, I'm a little hesitant on being a big buyer here, and the reason, good news, good price movement, but really little follow-up to the action today. I mean, when I'm looking at the S&P 500 today, I'm looking at the market being up about 1% right now. But Tim, most of that movement was on the gap, which means most of the price movement that happened was actually last night in the futures market. And ever since the stock market opened up, you're really only talking about a 6-point gain in the S&P 500, which is really nothing. And intraday, you're actually showing some reversal signals. When I'm looking at the response to silver, silver initially went from $17.90 down to about $17.55 before it's recovered everything that it kind of went through earlier today as well. When you're looking at the euro dollar, for example, which is probably the number one thing that happened, the price movement in the euro dollar, you had a huge price movement from the opening of the market yesterday. We don't see a lot of gapping situations, especially with the euro dollar. But when the news came out and the forex market opened last night, you saw a gap from 107.25 all the way up to about the top notch, about 109, which is 175 pip price movement on that breakout. But then it's initially sold off after that. So what I'm seeing is, yes, it was positive on the euro. It was going to be positive on the euro, a little bit more stability in the eurozone. It was positive in the markets, but not a whole lot of follow up on the intraday. So once the New York stock market opened up at 9:30, once the U.S. banks opened up at 8 o'clock, both times Eastern Standard Time, it's not like the market really bought it after that open. And so a little bit of a profit taking is what I'm seeing. What I'm looking for is tomorrow and the next day. Let's see kind of how once we get more news on Trump's tax plan, but definitely a favorable response, just not a lot of follow up.
Yeah, and interesting news even throughout the world, obviously. Did you see the stuff going on in Venezuela over the weekend?
Yeah, and then you also had the attack in France that led up to the
Yeah.
elections as well. Let's talk Venezuela though.
Well, I was just going to bring it up because, I was out, over the weekend in Seattle in Bellevue, and I met, quite a few students from Asian markets. There was a Chinese woman that was in my class. I had 4 Indian men in my class, that had moved here, and we were talking about the gold markets and specifically risk and why people tend to want to hold on to metals. And they had mentioned, well, look at what's going on in Venezuela, Tim. I mean, we've experienced this in our history. And we had a discussion about that. When I read stories like this and I look at economies and governments so distraught and really, unpredictable, volatile, it does lend me to really open up my mind and try to think about why and how much we should be investing in alternative products, Matt. But the risk there in Venezuela, just another, domino that they've had in their own history. What do you think it will do to markets like gold when you see this kind of story coming through Latin America?
Well, I think gold is in a very. I've been on this for the last couple of months, but I think gold is ready and primed to have the next commodity boom. Gold, silver, and a lot of that is tied to the dollar. A lot of that is tied to, the uncertainty around the world. A lot of that is tied to China's belief in gold. But at the end of the day, when you have uncertainty like we've had in just this past week in Venezuela, in France, people spark to fear, and when people spark to fear, they rush to safety.
Yeah, no question about it. I feel for obviously the people, and as I, have been able to have the good fortune of mentoring so many people from different backgrounds, had a lot of, Latin students, Matt, and I know that if you grew up in Venezuela or even Brazil and some of the trouble they've had there with their government, or many of those countries, I mean, you're looking at this right now probably with great dismay. One of my students, he's a Brazilian native, and he actually moved to Italy because he wanted to get away from it. It's disheartening. It's disheartening, and you wonder how that economy can recover when you have such corruption. It's where
Oh, I
here in
don't
the
think
U.S.
can.
Yeah,
I,
and
I don't
I
think you
get
can.
frankly disgusted by the apathy we have here in the U.S. when we let politics go the way that it's been going and trending, and we don't
Well,
realize that there's great risk to these things.
and I mean that's what happens though when you go isolationist. You stop caring about the rest of the world, and the world eventually stops caring about you. And we get so focused in what's happening here in the States and yada 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 that we don't realize that there's atrocities happening around the world. And there's I was watching Bill Maher last night, his latest episode, and they were talking about Earth Day, and they were talking about, kind of, protecting the planet, and the number one commodity of the world is our planet and everything. And there was this woman on there, and she was a Republican, very very intelligent, thought she was very well spoken, and she says, "Well, Bill, not everybody believes the same way you do. Not everybody believes that." It's America's job to police the world, and not every and I think you're starting to see that in the populist movements in Europe, in Great Britain, in the U.S. Is that maybe it's time for us to focus on us. And you saw this, there's that hashtag campaign on Twitter. I think it's Buy American, High American, Hire American, and it's getting a lot of play with a lot of people in the U.S. where
Hmm.
people are kind of sick of dealing with the rest of the world, and we're seeing our problems here in the U.S. and they're saying, and I understand it. I do. I don't agree with it, but I do understand it. That I understand why people would be like, it's time to focus on us. Who cares what's happening in Venezuela, and who cares what's happening in France, and who cares what's happening in Syria or Iraq or North Korea? Let them do what they do, and but you know, that leads to massive, massive problems for us in the U.S. down the road. If somehow Venezuela destabilizes even further, if the right wing populist woman in France gets elected, if the Syria situation gets further, or if North Korea does get an ICBM that has the ability to hit the U.S., that's something that we have to deal with. And instead of focusing just solely on us, I do think we have it in our arsenal from an economic perspective to stop what's happening in North Korea. We should not allow North Koreans to get a hydrogen missile on an hydrogen bomb on an ICBM missile that could hit LA, or that could hit Salt Lake City, or that could hit San Francisco, or that could hit Alaska, or whatever the case might be. I do think we have a responsibility to step in and be the light for the rest of the world. Sometimes we lose that way, but I do believe that we do have a responsibility for that.
I would agree with that, and I do understand the instinct of somebody wanting to say buy American, hire American. Honestly,
Absolutely.
I have no problem with that at all. I will say this, it is one of the reasons why I find stories like this very cool that came out of Kentucky. I saw something online, Matt. We come from coal country, and we grew up, our grandpa was a coal miner, our dad was a coal miner till he quit, at about 30 years old, and changed our family's, kind of direction, for generations, probably. And so coal is in our blood. And I saw these guys out of Kentucky, and coal is obviously down. There are There were more job losses in the retail sector last quarter than there are in jobs in entirety in the coal sector in the entire country. So coal is way, way down. And these guys in Kentucky said, you know what? Maybe we're going to make, Silicon Valley, we're going to call it, Silicon Holler, right? We're going to bring people into the holler. That's what they talk about, the little valleys in Kentucky. And we're going to create a coding company. And I thought it was such a cool idea. And they've actually got some traction on it. And they're bringing people in. They're like, well, if we can get high speed Wi Fi and internet and all of the data, then we're going to train these hillbillies into becoming coders. I understand the instinct of hire
Well,
American, buy American, but why not come up with a new solution? Find a solution to a problem, right?
well, that's why I mean I had my father-in-law up at my house on Friday of last week, and such a great guy, love him to death. Trump supporter, you know, from coal, is of coal, spent his whole life in the mine, working for the mine, and his sole reason for supporting Trump was to bring back coal. And I love my father-in-law very, very dearly, but coal mining was not it, coal is not going dead because of regulations. Coal is going dead because there are cheaper, better alternative fuel sources. Coal is also going dead because of technology. And your story reminds me of another story. I can't remember where it is, but I do believe it was in Kentucky. And there was a town that was 90% of the people worked for the coal mine, right? The coal mine shut down. And so what the people did is they turned the town into a tourist town, and they started actually
Yeah.
making more money on the tourism factor than they did on the coal. And this town is like the coal miners like, no, 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 don't bring back coal. There's cheaper alternative fuel sources out there. So yeah, it's and the thing about it is, once an industry dies, let's say coal dies, it forces people to dig in and become something better. And I think that's what Obama was trying to do with all the regulations, was to say, okay, listen, guys, yeah, coal's dead, it's going away, but instead of trying to fight to save a type of energy that is dirty, that is bad for the environment, that is a dying industry anyways, why don't we retrain people? And that's what I love about your stories. These two individuals, they said, you know what? Yeah, coal's going away. So look, why don't we create a coding company, since everything in the world revolves around technology today, and let's bring in these miners who have never who all they know is how to mine, and let's retrain them, and let's see what we can create and how
Sure.
we can evolve. I don't think the world gets a better place by staring at the past saying we want to be there. I think the
Right.
world
And complaint.
gets to a better
Exactly.
place by looking in the future.
100%. I mean, that's a lesson for all of us in life, no question about it. And we understand pain. I mean, if you lose your job and you're in a depressed economy in a
Sucks.
certain area, it sucks. I mean, that's your family. But try to find solutions. I love what these guys did and found the article, Matt. It's at The Guardian, theguardian.com. It says Tech Industry Coding Kentucky Hillbillies. I'll get it out there on Twitter. And it's these guys, they created a company called BitSource in 2015. They went all in. They're trying to generate something. They're trying to build something. I guess they have some big hurdles. One of them is getting high-speed internet through there so that they can actually compete and whatnot. But I just thought it was a really cool story. Whether it ends up kind of kicking in or not, I have no idea. But it's a really cool story. And the coal sector, frankly, you're right. Whether coal comes back or not, believe me, we have friends and family in our life that would argue with us and give us very informed, detailed opinion about it for days. But I will give you a stat, Matt. Today, or actually a few days ago, April 21st, the UK was powered without any coal for the first day since the
100%.
Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
I
so
read that, and I thought it was such a cool thing. I really did. And again, we come from coal. Our father worked in the mine until 1979. Tim, you were born in 79. I was born in 77. Dad had four sons at the time, and he quit the mine and went out there and started a small business. And I thought
mhm,
it's just one of the most beautiful entrepreneurial things and he didn't know what it was going to lead to, right? And it didn't lead to, him becoming this, multi-billionaire, real estate guru, but it led him to, really show his children that, through that example. And again, I don't think consciously he was like thinking about it like that, but I do believe that decision led to us doing different things and our generations doing different things. And when I look at it kind of, and I take that same type of historical context, and I look at these two miners who started the coding company, and I look at the town in Kentucky who turned it into a tourist center. Once you leave something in the past, it forces you to find out who you are in the future. And we gotta stop being so beholden to those dogmas of the past that we just can't put ourselves in a better environment in the future. And that's what these guys did. That's what England, that Great Britain did. And I hope that's what we start doing for the future.
The Trading Justice Podcast is brought to you by Tackle Trading. From weekly reports to daily market recaps, Tackle Trading is your one-stop shop. Sometimes I wish I had another hand so I could give the website 3 thumbs up. Let's get back to episode 214 with your coaches, Matt and Tim Justice.
Welcome back to Trading Justice, episode number 214. This is Tim Justice, Coach T from TackleTrading.com, and your host here at the Trading Justice Podcast. We're going to go into our feature presentation here today, which is going to be on currencies. And, when we talk markets, eventually we end up talking about every product, and we probably talk about every strategy, more than once, and I think that's okay. Getting good at something is very valuable. I know as a mentor, as a trader, as a teacher, a coach, forex comes up often for me. People ask me all the time, Tim, should I trade forex? How do I trade forex? What are the advantages of forex? Things like this. And the foreign exchange market is a dynamic market. Forex, foreign exchange, the largest market by volume and measure in the world, and very, very popular globally. Matt, first off, I know that you're a big forex trader when it comes to leverage, and that doesn't mean, by the way, capital requirement. Because of the leverage, you don't have to dedicate as much money there. One or two or three things. What do you love about forex?
The simplicity, more than anything. To really try to really be good at trading forex, you need to understand two things. Number one, technical analysis, which I find is probably the most valuable thing when trading currency. But number two, you have to understand economics and how economics and politics plays a role in the value of something. Sometimes I had a gentleman in my room one time, and I was talking about the election of Donald Trump, and this was before Trump got elected. And I was talking about if Trump is elected, there's basically going to have an impact on the marketplace. Because most of the market is pricing in a Hillary Clinton win. So if Donald Trump gets elected, there's going to be an adjustment. And I wasn't saying down or up. Was just saying an adjustment. And you saw it just yesterday with the French elections. When you have political and economic situations, that is going to have a immediate impact on the value of their currency, much more than on the marketplace. For example, the euro dollar today was just the number one price movement out there in the world over the last 24 hours, over the last 12 hours. The markets are up 1%, but the currency market is moving over 2% right now. That's because the economics and politics has a very, very important role. And that doesn't mean you have to be a poli-sci geek and an economic wizard. You have to understand the economic calendar, and you have to understand the political calendar. When Brexit happened, that's going to have an immediate impact. Any news-based announcements like economic reports or central bank announcements, that's going to have an immediate impact. Tim, I remember January 15th of 2015 when the SNB, the Swiss National Bank, depegged from the euro and went to a negative interest rate. Nobody was expecting that, and it had a massive impact where literally hundreds of billions of dollars exchanged hands in a very, very short time frame. So you could sit there and say, well, I'm just going to focus on technical analysis, but then you have these situations that arise that create massive volatility in the currency market. And if you're not aware of those, it doesn't matter how good of a trader you are, you can wipe out an entire account if you're not ready for those types of events. So I do, and you might say, well, that's not simple. Well, it really kind of is. You just have to be aware. Be aware of when certain political situations arise, or be aware when certain economic situations. On an economic calendar, you know exactly when every economic report is reported and what is expected in those. So, I love it because of the simplicity. It's a directional market, meaning you buy or sell currencies. There's not an unlimited amount of currencies we trade. Typically, currency traders will focus on two or three or four different currency pairs instead of hundreds and hundreds of stocks and hundreds of different strategies. You're just buying a currency or you're selling a currency, and so I do believe it's simple. I also love the leverage factor to it.
Sure.
Being able to put a small amount of money into a trade, but control a tremendous amount of money is a huge benefit, especially as a retail trader where we don't have the money that the banks have. But it's also an interest market where you can collect an interest out there as well. So, there's many reasons why I love forex, but those are a few of them, and quite frankly, it's a phenomenon that is just exploding in popularity over the last 20 years, but mostly outside the U.S. because inside the U.S. we don't have to deal with currencies as much as people outside the U.S. do.
hmm And there are a lot of things that I will probably be very direct about. One of them is the leverage component,
Yeah,
because people get excited about forex, especially if you're broke. Let's call it like it is. Some people who are
yeah,
getting into the markets and they want to dabble, they want to try to make a lot of money real quick and get rich and become, Jesse Livermore 2017 edition. Well, I get it. But if you're a young trader or even a veteran trader and you put a couple thousand in Forex and you use it all the time, you got no chance. I love the leverage and I love the 50 to 1. That's in the US, by the way. There's leverage at 100 to 1, 200 to 1, 400 to 1, depending on the country, because Forex is not centrally regulated, right? It's locally regulated based on the country that you're in. And I love the leverage, but that actually, we need to understand that. That means you don't need as much capital. It doesn't mean you should use all of your capital. Matt, the Forex market, so many benefits, 24 hours a day, simple, chart-based, technical, news-driven. I mean, all of the great things about it, you could list, it would take a full page, boom, 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 bullet point like you just did. One of the biggest downfalls to Forex is actually the double-edged sword of the leverage. Give a little direction out there for our new traders. Matt, you remember when we were new and we didn't always listen to the old guy giving advice, but
no, because
we're the old guys now.
we
Yeah,
want to put $2,000 into a trade and pop it into 10,000, right? And all
sure,
that does is get you broke. Leverage is the most powerful thing in all markets, and you have to respect it. You have to respect leverage. If you want to blow up an account, here's what you do: over leverage yourself. I
sure.
guarantee you will blow up an account. It won't be. It might not be in your first trade, your first 10 trades, your first 50 trades, but eventually it's going to catch up to you, and you're going to have that one trade that just goes against you, and you're just going to blow up your entire account. Because even let's say you have a $2,000 account, Tim, okay, and you're like, oh, I can trade currency. I'm gonna put $1,000 into a currency trade. Well, to lose your entire $2,000, you would just have to have today happen, right?
Mm,
In the euro dollar. That's all you would have to have, and then you're basically kicked out of the trade once, and you have no money left in your account because you're not just risking that $1,000 you have in that trade, Tim. You're risking the money that's in the account, and so you have that one situation that happens that hits you in the face, and you're just out of the game. There's this concept in the market called the risk of ruin. And what the
mm,
risk of ruin basically states is that the more you put into a trade, that is your standard position sizing, the more you are risking basically blowing up your account or ruining your account. So what the risk of ruin basically states is that in any leveraged trade, if you allocate more than 4% of your portfolio in those leveraged trades, each percent you increase, your risk dramatically increases. For example, let's just deal with a non-leveraged environment. So stock market IRA type thing. If you put all, let's say you have $20,000 and you put $20,000 into one trade. Only thing that has to happen for you to blow up the account is that company go bankrupt, or that company just tremendously downtrend, or whatever the case is. You are putting too much money into that. But I wouldn't say that's I wouldn't say that's a likely scenario. That if you put $20,000 into Tesla stock, that you're risking $20,000, because I don't think Tesla's going away anytime soon. But let's say you
mm,
put that $20,000 into $20,000 worth of call options on Tesla. Well, for you to lose that $20,000, Tim, you wouldn't have to have Tesla go bankrupt. You wouldn't have to have Tesla even tremendously downtrend. You would just have to have Tesla go through a short-term downtrend. That's it. And you're basically starting over. If you put $20,000 of a $20,000 account into a futures trade, all you have to do is have 2 or 3 days go against you and you're done. And if you put $20,000 into a currency trade out of $20,000, all you have to do is have 1 day go against you and you're basically done. And so what the risk of ruin is saying is it's saying, guys, if you want to be a trader and investor for your rest of your life, you have to control risk. That's the number one rule of trading is protect capital. So in those leveraged environments, specifically the options, the currency, and the forex market, you want to position a position according to risk. So you should only put into a trade what you are willing to risk. If you're not willing to risk $1,000 of that $2,000 account, Tim, then don't put $1,000 into a currency trade because that's what you're risking. I don't care what your stop loss is because if you would have had a stop loss on the euro dollar today and it went against you, it would have blew it out of the water, right? Especially in those high economic environments where you might say, well, the market's open, it's not going to gap. Well, wait for the Fed to announce interest rates and see the volatility and see the bid-ask spreads widen and see it get screwed on bid-ask spreads from the broker perspective. Yeah, are you right? Yeah, but the broker's not giving your money back. You have to position sizes according to what you're willing to lose. So if you have a small account in currency and you're just starting out and you say, well, I'm only willing to risk $100. Well, Tim, then your position size is $100. That's
Yeah.
what your position size is. And even on $100 of a $2,000 account, you're still breaking the risk of ruin because the risk of ruin states 4%, not 5%. And so what you should do is position size at $80, 4% of account, more trades, not less trades. And what that also means is on any one trade, nothing's going to kill you. You would have to have variable after variable after variable after variable, all go against you in the same time frame for you to lose that account. So the way probability analysis works is that if you have probability on one trade, any variable can blow up that trade. But if you have probability on 20 trades, so instead of putting $2,000 into a trade, you take 20 trades, you put $100 into each trade. The probability is going to always be with you. It's like a casino.
Very, very well put, Matt. And really, you're talking about what we do in mentoring, and I've seen you work with students and new traders and helping them build systems, and you use that phrase "system" a lot for a reason. And guys, if you're out there and you're listening, there were so many nuggets there. I would rewind that the last 5 minutes and listen to it back because, frankly, risk of ruin theory, if you can reverse engineer from the risk and you understand how to position size, then you can build systems and you can build profitable trading,
Well,
businesses and products.
and you can, and you know what else you can do, and why systems are so important, Tim, is you can build a system that guarantees profitability. You can't guarantee that on any one trade. You can't guarantee that in any one week. You can't even guarantee that in any one month. But if you have a system that is tailored towards understanding probabilities, average returns, average drawdowns, you can build a system that isn't foolproof because you still have to have the emotional context of applying the system. But the system is. The system works. The system's back tested. The system's rules based. The system's average
Sure.
probabilities. The system's average return on investment. So let's take, for example, a $50,000 portfolio. You can design a system based on cash flow systems where you can have 80 to 90% probability of generating a 5% monthly return. You can build that system, and you can't guarantee
I got
profitability
a
in
would
any
you
one
rather
month.
for you.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
have a great would you rather. So this will kind of tie into what we're talking about here. Would you rather take somebody, and who is the greatest technician at timing the market that knows when to get in, when to get out, as good as anybody you've ever met, Matt, but
Hmm.
over leverages, or would you rather take you remember that little I can't remember what it was, like a little bird thing on The Simpsons. There was an episode of The Simpsons where Homer left it and it just would hit the keyboard over and
Hmm.
over again. Just like a random generated trade that has no thought, no interest. There's no reason why they get in and out, but it's money managed well.
I would rather have the second. I would rather have the
Yeah.
second because the finest technician of all time is Jesse Livermore. He's the finest trader of all time, and he made and lost fortunes in the market from 1907
Sure.
until 1940s. And he was one of the greatest traders of all time. And he made and keyword lost fortunes because he was a directional trader. He was a highly speculative trader. One of the greatest investors of all time, Warren Buffett, he's never went broke. Never. And you know what he does, Tim? He rents out his stocks. He,
Sure.
he does
Yeah.
he does covered calls. He compounds gains. And it doesn't mean there's not room in a portfolio for everything, and it doesn't mean there's not room in a portfolio for forex, right? Coming back to forex here, I just think that from my perspective, if you're designing a portfolio that is going to, give you the number one thing that everybody wants is time. So if it's going to give you the greatest amount of time with the least amount of work possible, that's going to be a portfolio that is highly into stock and options, stocks, renting out the stocks, cash flow systems, and then 10 to 20% is in currency or futures or a combination of those two. Because currency trading, I love it, but it does take a little bit more time because you're short-term trading it, which means you're typically in front of the market and so on and so forth. So, there's room for both of them in there, right? I'm not trying to discourage anybody from, using, the forex market as a speculative tool. I'm just saying if you want to be a trader and if you want to be an investor for the rest of your life and not just the next 2, 3, 4 months, then you need to design that portfolio and you need to design your systems, and your systems need to be rules based, and your systems need to be back tested. And in currency, there's a very specific system that we trade in currency, and it's based on the bank opens. It doesn't have to be much more complicated than simply understanding the banking industry.
BOT, baby, the Bank Open Trade. And Matt, actually, this is a currency trade that you introduced to me. I believe that your mentor, Keith King, who also does the Forex report at Tackle Trading, introduced to you, as well as Jeff Crystal and probably many of the other mentors we've been trained from. But the Bank Open Trade is a real interesting one when you're looking at Forex because it's a very simple idea. Figure out when the bank's open and trade based on your technical criteria. Now, technical criteria is going to be built over the course of months, if not years, of learning how to read a chart. It's got to be money managed, like you talked about. It has to fit in your portfolio design, like you talked about. But the bank open itself is a very simple thing. We tend to focus on four specific bank opens, Matt, and that's going to be the London Open, the New York Open, the Sydney Open, and the Tokyo Open. Why do we focus on those, and how do people know how to figure out when they are?
Well, forexmarkethours.com. You can that will list out when the times are. For the forex trading hours, you basically, how I kind of see it is kind of when's the first market open up. And the first market opens up not in the US. Sometimes we here in the US, we like to think all things US driven, right? Everything's US driven. But the first market that actually opens up in the currency market is the Sydney Open. And the Sydney Open opens up at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It lasts until 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The second bank that opens up is Tokyo, and that opens up at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that closes at 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time as well. Then you have the London Open, which opens up at 3 a.m. Eastern and closes at noon Eastern Standard Time. And then you have the last bank that opens up in the system, and that's the New York Open, and that opens up at 8 a.m. and it closes at 5 p.m. So basically, anywhere it's 8 o'clock in the morning, that's when the banking system opens up. Now, you can trade a currency 24 hours a day, any day you can, but that doesn't mean the massive majority of the movement happens at all the time. The massive majority of the movement that happens to a currency is when that bank is open. And the way I've always liked to think about it, Tim, was basically, when it's 5 o'clock, in the US, right? It's 10 p.m. in London. You can trade the British pound at 10 p.m. in London. There's no doubt about it. Now, outside of last night when we had the French elections, most of the time at 10 p.m. in London, nothing's happening. No economic reports are happening that's going to impact the pound. Nothing's happening. The banks aren't open. There's no international trade going on. There's no borrowing. There's no announcements. There's no this. There's no that. And then the London traders, I've always said that Whenever I ask people, and I'm teaching the bank open trade to people, I'm like, hey, what are the London traders doing at 10 o'clock p.m.? And they're like, oh, they're sleeping. I'm like, no, they're not. They're London traders. They're drinking a beer. But what they're not doing, regardless if they're drinking a beer or hanging out with their family or watching a movie or whatever, or sleeping, they're not trading because there's nothing happening at 10 p.m. to really impact that British pound specifically. But at that same time period, it's 8 o'clock in the morning in London, or excuse me, in Sydney, Australia. And at 8 o'clock in the morning, the Sydney Australian banks, the Royal Bank of Australia, opens up. International trade is happening. The birds are chirping and the traders are trading, and economic reports is coming out. And a lot of times, what we will see is when that bank opens up, that currency will start to move. That's where we see historically the largest movement is when that bank opens up. And then, I like to think about things in motion, staying in motion. And if that bank opens up and the Australian dollar goes up, we're going to buy it. And if that bank opens up and the Australian dollar goes down, we're going to sell it. And then we'll put a stop loss in to control the risk. And so that's the bank open and the entire currency 24-hour cycle. And we've talked about this in the pod a little bit in the past, but it's always good to talk about forex. The entire 24-hour cycle is based around the two primary things: when a bank is open versus when a bank is closed. And then the secondary thing is economic reports and or political situations. Those are the things you have to understand. Technical analysis is number one. There's no doubt about it. But second to technical analysis in forex, it's understanding the 24-hour cycle based on the banking cycle, and it's understanding the economic reports. There's a wonderful website called forexfactory.com. Forexfactory.com has one of the best calendars out there. I think they do a wonderful job. And so if you'll just kind of focus on, when major announcements, are coming out, there's about 10 or 11 every single month. These are like retail sales, consumer spending, consumer confidence, GDP numbers, unemployment numbers, manufacturing numbers, Fed announcements, those types of things. So when those things happen to a currency, and every country reports similar economic reports, when those things happen, they're going to have an impact. So number one, you got to focus on technical analysis. Number two, you got to focus on the economic and political cycles, definitely. But also you have to understand the 24-hour cycle that's based around the banking industry.
One thing I really like sending people to, Matt, is actually the Forex Trading 101 video playlist on YouTube. And a lot of those videos are the ones that you built and that you've done. There's quite a few posts over there. So guys, if you're out there and you're thinking, I need to know more about this, there's probably 18 different videos. I would venture to guess about a couple hours worth of, content that you could absorb about how to trade different currencies and currency pairs and all that kind of stuff. It's not going to make you an
Yeah,
expert, but it'll get you going for sure.
there's 4 or 5 videos that are 20 to 40 minutes long, where I called it the Forex 101 series, Forex
Mhm.
Trading 101. And I did about a year and a half ago, just kind of on some basics. Then I also did some blogs and whatnot. But we're actually developing a basic Forex program for our members over there at Tackle. Keith King is in the development stage. He's the one that does the Forex report for us on a weekly basis, and he sent me the initial presentation that I'm going to go through. So, we're in the process of making that a little more formal for our students, so that as they start getting interested in Forex, they know exactly where to go. But while we're in that process of developing that, yeah, just go check out YouTube, type in Forex Trading 101. You can also search it at Tackle Trading Forex Trading 101 as well.
Yeah, lots of great resources out there, and probably one of the best ones, Matt, is this podcast. I mean, over the course of the last 214 episodes, I think we probably had about 5 or 6 different episodes on Forex in some regard or the other, day trading Forex, and so on and so forth. I love the bank open trade, which is what you have been teaching here through the podcast today, and what we're talking about because of its simplicity. It's hard once you get the schedule down to miss the bank open. You just got to get there, and you got to pick a cycle that fits your trading style. Another thing I love about it is Forex being a 24-hour market. People can't make the excuse that, well, I'm a morning person or I'm not a morning person or whatever. Guys, there's a market 24 hours a day. You can
Yeah.
find a bank open cycle based on your work schedule, based on your
Well, and
life, that you can still get in front of and trade.
that's very important because you got to understand who you are as well. I'm not a morning person. I'm a night owl. Mornings, I get up at 7:30, right when the U.S. markets open. And no, I do not look at the U.S. markets when they open. I typically check the futures the night before. But the first thing I do is I get up and I take the kids to school, come back, catch up on some work, kind of plan the day, check the accounts, check the trades. But I actually prefer trading currency later on. Like for example, I don't trade a lot of the U.S. Bank Open because I'm typically sleeping at 6 o'clock a.m. my time. So I like the Australian Open. I like the Japanese Open. And I also like the European Open, which is about midnight my time. Frankfurt, Germany opens up about an hour before London does. And every now and then when I'm up at that time, I like trading the London, the British pound as well. But the euro, some type of euro Australia combo is my go to bed type trade, where I do the bank open trade right before I go to sleep, put a stop loss in. But yeah, you got to understand who you are, what your obligations are, your own personal 24-hour a day. And the reality, guys, is even though I don't day trade as much as I used to, but even when I was day trading quite a bit over the last couple of years, I'd be in the market maybe 30 minutes a day. Check the open when it comes out. If nothing's happening, don't do anything. Put your orders in, go live your life. I just, the older I get, the less I want to stare at a computer. That's why I've probably shifted to more cash flow systems than aggressive trading over the last 2 years.
Yeah, and so kind of exactly along those lines, I will say this as well, that if you are, young and aggressive and want to stare at a computer all day, make sure you do it with systems. Matt, when you were talking earlier about position sizing and whatnot, it reminded me of a student that I had once. I didn't teach this student in class. The student found me online and sent me a Skype request, and I didn't recognize the name, but I took it anyway and sent me a message saying, "Hey, I understand you trade and you're a mentor. Can you help me?" I've been through a rich dad education class and I'm learning how to do some basics. And I said, sure, what's going on? And long story short, Matt, he was from Africa. He was day trading aggressively. He had taken a lot of self-paced education, read a lot of books on how to read a chart and this and that. And he was actually pretty good at reading a chart and putting trades on. And he couldn't figure out why he was losing money. And he had a small account, and every time he took a trade, Matt, just think about this. He put every penny he had on every trade and tried
It's
to
gonna blow
manage
up.
that and just blew it up. See,
It's
guys
gonna blow
out
it
there,
up.
if you want to trade the forex market, you should. It's an exciting market. It's a leverage market. I know professional traders who trade forex exclusively.
Hmm.
It's something that will help you understand across markets, the impact that's going on. Whenever we talk market skyline, Matt, we're inherently talking about currencies, because they have such a driving impact on everything. But make sure that if you're going to use the leverage, understand it, control it, and that's actually the whole point of trading, and whatnot. Guys, great discussion here. I appreciate that, Matt, on Forex and some of the basics of the bank open trade. Remember the 4 bank open cycles, like Matt had mentioned: Sydney, Tokyo, London, and New York. You can understand those cycles just by looking at any calendar, but go out there and start learning about the Forex market.
We're all in a race versus time. Who can be to work the earliest and on the freeway the first to avoid the rush hour traffic? But let's change the way we think about time. The way you spend your time defines you. So, what's your definition? Time is money, so let's spend it together. The TJ podcast goes live once a week on iTunes. Educate yourself, get a few laughs, and enjoy your time.
All right, Matt, let's have some fun. This is where we're gonna, go through a few different things. I want to play a couple Would You Rathers. I had some prep for you. I am gonna kind of surprise you with these. I don't think that I've told you about these yet. Then we've got a few coaches mailbag questions and clown of the week. You ready?
Yep.
Number one. All right, Matt. Would you rather, okay, invest into Spotify or Quora? Now, do you know these two services?
Core's it's a Windows product, right?
Well, it is. It's a web product. So Quora is kind of like Yahoo Answers
Yeah.
2.0, right? It's
Well,
where, yeah.
it's what I talk to my computer if I want my computer to find something for me.
No, 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 no. You're thinking that's Cortana.
Cortana. That's
That's Cortana.
Cortana. That's right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Okay, so
Quora.
okay, Quora. So Quora is like an Amazon. Oh, explain to me real quick.
Let me walk you through it. So I actually subscribe to Quora, and essentially Quora is kind of like a
Use it in your house, right?
social network. No, no, it's an online product. It's a social network,
How do you
and some
spell it?
people, some QUORA or QUARA, something like that. And essentially, Matt, it's exploding, right? It is really this huge thing, and frankly, some people think that it could start to replace some services like Twitter and Facebook for a certain type of client. People that don't like the trolls, people that want to focus on Q&A. There was an interesting, they raised, and the reason why I bring it up, and I'll give you some context. I read an article at Mashable over the weekend where Quora raised 85 million as they're looking to potentially turn this into an IPO at some point. And Cam, I'll get you the link. You can tweet that out. It's right there. So I'm looking at this company, Matt, that is exploding. They've got a valuation at $1.8 billion. They have all kinds of, and it's almost like imagine social media where you can have a conversation without the trolls. Now, there's always going to be trolls, right? But that's kind of where it's going. So you might want to go check it out.
Oh, I just signed up for it. It was easy as hell. It was oh, basically it connects to Facebook or your Google profile, right?
Yeah,
And
I don't
then
know
and
who
then
owns it.
you can kind of pick the stuff that well, you can log in with Facebook for a lot of different things. But it kind of you kind of get a pick about what this type of stuff you like to kind of look at, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so you have your interest,
So is it kind of
politics,
like news?
trading,
It's news.
investing. It's like
News,
news, but
answers,
groups.
questions. Yeah.
hmm And then
Oh,
the answers, people like the core community, experts will come in, or even just people will come in and answer the question. And the more worthwhile the answer, it will go bumping up in the answer list. So, like if, let's say, somebody has a question about science, and Bill Nye, the science guy, comes in and answers it thoroughly, that's probably going to get highly rated. And then you actually have a very engaged, active user base.
well,
I know
like
this.
they're like I'm kind of starting to see it. So basically, you're going to ask a question, and then people are going to come in, experts, so-called experts, going to come in. Like what I'm looking at right here, my neighbors keep insisting that it is illegal for me to film their children, which I was reading. I'm like, well, oh, yes, it is. With my security camera that is by my front door. Is this true? And the answer was like, no. These people are trying to intimidate you into ignoring the damage that their kids did. Tim, here's a question that was written on April 17 in philosophy. Are sexism, racism, and homophobia wrong? And yeah, well, people are asking, right? Yes, they're all wrong. Sexism, racism, and homophobia all have one thing in common. They discriminate against a group of people. And then you can upvote or downvote the answer or something like that, right?
hmm Yeah,
Oh,
and
okay, I'm getting
I've
closer.
used it a little bit, and I'm not saying I'm a big Quora user. Saw the news come through on the funding round, but and it got me interested, because we've talked about it all the time, Matt, the trolls and the problems, the arguments on certain social media. Some people love that, and other people don't. And I think as social media becomes just a very real part of everybody's life all the time, there will be pockets of other alternatives. I'm sure that Quora could absolutely be one. And investors are obviously betting big on it at 1.8 billion valuation, so that's no joke. And so, but the would you rather was Quora or Spotify. And the reason I bring up Spotify is that they just did more rounds of funding themselves to at some point, go into a public offering as well. They have an agreement with Universal, a deal with Merlin. Do you use Spotify? But by the way,
I do, but I use more Pandora than I use Spotify.
yeah, I love Spotify. I started with Pandora, and I understand people who love Pandora. But Spotify, to me, especially as it expanded to more artists and whatnot, you can listen to any album that's on there, from start to finish, or playlist, or radio, or podcast, or anything. I personally, I feel like it's the best that there is, even above iTunes, frankly.
Hmm.
And I love them. I have my own personal opinion on this. What do you think? New social media in Quora or Spotify? Which one would you do?
This is an interesting little question. Um, well, I will tell you that Pandora, um, if we take the Spotify approach to going public, right? And I'm not saying they're the same thing, but if we take the Spotify approach to going public here, let's look at how Pandora has fared in that environment because they're probably a fairly similar type environment, right?
Hmm.
Pandora came out an IPO in 20, I want to say 2011, right? Initial public offering 2011 was 13, initial public offering came out at $20 a share. Traded up to around 26 before it came all the way down to close around $13 a share. So anywhere between 13 and 20 was really kind of their IPO price, but their IPO opened up at $20 a share. It's currently worth $10 a share. Now, in that environment, you've had basically trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in stimulus money come into the market, some of it directly into the market through quantitative easing. And
Hmm.
in that time frame, since that same time period, July of 2011, let's look at the S&P 500 and what it's done. Since 2011, since July 2011, right there, the S&P 500 is up about 100%. So the S&P 500 has doubled in price, and Pandora has been cut in half in that environment. That does not bode well for something along the lines of a Spotify. Now, maybe Spotify figures out what Pandora has done wrong and they fix it, a la Twitter versus Facebook. Maybe that's the case. But I got a Cora, and I'm looking at this product here, and kind of like it. I only know it very, 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 very. Just know it just off, literally on this podcast. Kind of like it though. You can really kind of key on the things that you want to focus on. Um, so I would have to say Cora.
Interesting. Cam, I want to bring Cam in whenever if you have a mic, Cam, you can come on in here. If not, that's okay. Cam, this is an interesting
Sure
would you
do, sure
rather.
do.
So you get one pick, Quora or Spotify. Which one would you take, Cam?
Um, After hearing what Matt had to say, Core sounds like a pretty big deal. Eliminates trolls, and you just get right to the bacon. What's real, and it's rated off of, professional opinions. So, I'm gonna go with Cora.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's the perfect would you rather, Matt. Stimulates, makes us think. We learn something from it. It's the whole point of the game. I don't know which one's better. I think it's a tough one as well in terms of actually investing. From the service standpoint, I love Spotify. I'm interested in Quora. Possibly might be using it more. It's kind of an interesting little forum there. But I do know this that Spotify and Pandora to me are not the same standard. And I'll just say it because of this. I think just Spotify is a better service. Whether they can monetize that and turn that into profitability, I have no idea. Social media tends to make more profitability. I mean, if Quora can turn advertising like they've done through other mediums and become profitable, that seems interesting. We'll have to keep track of them. More IPOs down the
Well,
road. Seems like every week we keep talking about potential IPOs on this podcast, Matt. So many new things happening.
I mean, there's a lot very popular IPOs that are being worked on right now that probably will be released sometime next year or the year after. So, obviously as they happen, we'll kind of look into it. But my stance on Quora versus Spotify is more about how the music industry is a downtrending industry when it comes to profitability.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, interesting. Now,
So
I
many
will.
ways to get
Here's
into
another one.
entertainment.
Oh, I
Yep, go
agree.
ahead.
Well, frankly, it's going to be streaming directly into our brain. We talked about Tesla earlier and the reason why Wall Street it loves Tesla. There's a great blog article on the blog waitbutwhy.com, one of the most popular ones, where Tim Urban, the blogger, interviewed and had a discussion with Elon Musk about the Neuralink. And I think we'll have to leave that for maybe another podcast because I want to dig into the blog first. But this idea that we are going to connect computers to our brain at some point in our future, very
Yeah,
science,
I
science.
saw the interview. I saw the interview. That's something my dad would say. I've seen Terminator.
Sure. But it's an interesting idea, and we are connecting in more and more ways. I want to go on to our coach's mailbag. Fun would you rather, and we're going to keep playing that in the
Did you have one
future.
more though? Did you have one more?
I was thinking about one, but I don't know if I want to throw this out there because I know your answer. I'll do it anyway. All right, Verizon. Okay, so Verizon recently had a negative quarter, Matt. In fact, I saw several articles come out about Verizon. They're trying to boost their network and give more data. They had some people because they lost more subscribers the last quarter than they have in years and years and years. In fact, one of the first negative growth quarters they've had.
Yeah,
And I'm going to ask you, would you rather stick with Verizon paying more money or pick any other service as long as it worked? Is there something about Verizon that you like?
there's nothing about Verizon I like except their service is superior. But I'm currently with T-Mobile.
Yeah.
So I actually left Verizon, went to T-Mobile,
So you're one of
and
those subscriber drops then, right?
well, me, my wife, my four kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the only reason that I prefer Verizon, because I do prefer, is because their service is better. And when I'm meaning their service, I'm not talking their people. Their service right now is better from a global perspective. Less phone calls drops. You don't have to say, "Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?" And T-Mobile works for me fine. I got a booster in my house, and that works for me fine. But sometimes I run into issues with T-Mobile when I'm traveling and whatnot. But I completely understand why somebody would leave Verizon. Their customer service is probably one of the worst out there in that industry. T-Mobile is far superior in just service. I've read a lot of articles from Sprint and from T-Mobile specifically how they're putting in new lines to make basically Verizon, seem like the dinosaur that they kind of are right now. I would rather move away from Verizon. I don't think their service in terms of how they treat people is very good. I think for Verizon, the last 5 years, it's all about been the bottom line, and now they're starting to feel that pain a little bit of being the top dog monopoly and treating people like garbage. Yeah, I would rather move away from them. Now, with that said, if T-Mobile doesn't get their shit together over the next year and a half, I will go back to Verizon because for me, having phone calls that aren't dropped. We all do business on our phone these days, right?
Mhm.
So for me, having the best service out there is the number one reason why I have a cell phone, even if I have to pay a little bit more of a markup and premium. I mean, Tim, I was spending 300 bucks a month, $330 a month at Verizon. I'm paying $160 a month at T-Mobile, and for the same plan, for the same, situations. T-Mobile, they made a mistake on my bill 2 months ago. So you know what they did, Tim? They wiped it off. They wiped off my bill and they said, "We'll take care of it," right? Verizon would never do that. Not one day in their life would they even think about, "Oh, hell no, we're not going to do that." So, for me, it goes to, number one priority for cell phones coverage. Verizon has the best coverage right now. But T-Mobile and other carriers are making roads there, and they're starting to show it on Verizon. And Verizon's chart, I mean, if we're looking at kind of just the price action on Verizon's chart over the last 3 years, I mean, you're talking something that's stagnant at best, despite the market going up. So, obviously they're losing market share.
And that's, I guess, the big question for me. And it was just a head scratcher. I saw the headline and it made me think of you instantly, by the way, because of what you dealt with Verizon recently and switching back and forth. And it just made me wonder, this is a $190 billion company that charges more money on average, I would say. I don't have every data or statistic on that for their service. It is highly rated. It's highest rated service in 48 out of the 50 states. So they've dominated. They've earned the right to charge more. But if they're starting to lose
Yeah.
subscribers, Matt, that may be a pretty bad trend. We'll have to carry that and watch that over the second quarter here and see
Well,
if
and
that
I don't
translates even
I
further.
don't mind paying. I don't mind paying more money for quality service. I don't mind doing that. I think all of us have those little lines in the sand that we're not willing to cross, but I'm willing to pay a little bit more premium for a higher service. And Verizon does have a higher service when it comes to, quality of their usage. There's no doubt about that. When I went to T-Mobile, Tim, It literally, I was fine for like a month because we were living where T-Mobile service was pretty decent. We moved into our new home here in the river bottoms of South Jordan. I couldn't have a phone call. I
Yeah.
just couldn't. And so I
You're down
immediately I
in the
thought,
holler.
yeah, I just couldn't make a phone call, but with Verizon I could. So yeah, but I do think T-Mobile is going to continue to make inroads on them.
So do me a favor in the future. I want you to just do this at least once or twice to your neighbors. Embrace your Kentucky roots and your coal mining roots. And when you say down in the river bottoms, I want you to call it a holler.
Holler,
So the South
we're down
Jordan
the
holler.
holler. We're in
Yeah,
South
yeah,
Jordan Holler.
yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Oh,
Yeah, of course I will.
absolutely. Now you have to. So there you
I
go.
don't have I don't have a choice. When they
All right.
come
Well,
over,
can
when
you think of a would you rather?
oh, I don't have any would you rather's right now. Um, oh,
All right, I got a real easy one. I got a real
okay,
easy one.
go ahead.
Okay. Would you rather play the game of horse or the game of lightning when just messing around on a basketball court?
Horse any day of the week. It's
Yeah,
more
yeah.
skilled. Horse is more
Cam, you're a
skilled.
baller. You like
I'm
basketball,
going with
Cam? Horse or lightning?
horse. I got a couple things I think a couple people can't do. So
Yeah, horse is better game of skill. I got one last one. I do have a would you rather.
All
Okay,
right.
and Cam, you reminded me in the chat there. Would you rather? The Jazz Clips series is split 2-2. Um, we're all Jazz fans. Would you rather invest in the Jazz in this series or in the Clips in this series? Clips still
Well,
have home court. 2 games
I
left to
was
play at home.
I was at the game last night. Went down to see. Figured, Sunday night, back home in town, 2-1 series. Got a chance to go down, and that stadium was rocking. Our fans are great, and the chant "Beat LA, beat LA." It got my blood going. I loved it. Um, Great game, and you had our best player come back. Gobert got back on the floor.
They good
We
too.
then had maybe our best player, debatable which one is, Gordon Hayward,
Nah,
get sick, and he was out of the
Hayward's
game.
best
So
player.
yeah.
I love Rudy. Don't get me wrong, but if you had to tell me which would you rather have Rudy or Hayward, I'm picking Hayward. Hayward's that boy can ball, and that doesn't mean it's that doesn't mean Rudy can't, right? Defensive, amazing, efficient beast, but it's easy for me. It's Gordon's amazing.
Well, the
Hayward's
answer for me
ridiculous.
is the Jazz because I'm a
Yeah.
homer. But I will say this: I Chris Paul's the best player on the floor in my opinion,
Best
and
players usually win those series.
yeah, so it's going to be a tough one when
Two at
Chris
home.
Paul is playing as well as he
Here's
is.
You know what though? Here's the deal breaker for me with the Clips. They just lost old Blake, right? They lost Blake. Have to deal with a little bit of what we had to deal with, like losing Rudy those first few games. Then when Rudy gets healthy, we lose Hayward and Big Joe Johnson. Just a maniac last night. Couldn't miss in the fourth quarter. Was
Man's a professional.
he's a professional scorer, is what he is.
Yep.
But I got to go Jazz. I got Jazz in seven. I think this is a 7 game series. I think Jazz still at Game 7 on LA's home court. And for those of you who don't know, we here in Utah, we do not like the Clippers at all. At
A
all.
lot of
They're
it
like
is
one of
Laker
our
hate, by the
biggest
way.
rivalries out there. We used to hate the Lakers, but now we kind of feel bad for them.
Yeah.
So now our hate has shifted to the because we are caring people in Utah. We do care in Utah. So since the Lakers are really horrible, we actually kind of feel bad for them. But the Clippers, they whine. It's the Clippers. They're born out of Donald Sterling. They deserve to lose.
Wise words, Matt. Wise words. Now I have a would you rather for the audience. Would you rather do Coach's Mailbag or Clown of the Week? This is incredibly dope because you don't have to choose. We're going to do both. Sit back and enjoy episode 214 of the Trading Justice podcast, live and in living color. Back to y'all.
But Matt, I got to tell you, as I've traveled and worked with our students in all kinds of different mediums. People who love the podcast, they really love the podcast, and I got to tell you, I love them, and I appreciate that we
We
get a
love you
chance to
guys.
deliver this to them. There's something unique about podcasting and listening to podcasts as I travel. I mean, it's a different connective medium here, and we're growing. Hopefully, we can keep getting better at it. I
Well,
got some. Go ahead.
yeah, I just want to say one thing to that. Having a podcast and whatnot, it allows us to get our message, our mindset, what we're seeing out to the people who follow us. And we do the same thing with the people we follow, right? We all like that. We become loyal listeners to different podcasts out there. So if you like the podcast, guys, give us a nice little review. We love you guys for listening, and you're the best part of this podcast, no doubt about it.
Well, and I'll tell you something in that regard, Matt. Ken Lawrence, who is a student I have from Seattle, and his wife Kumiko. And Ken listens to the podcast regularly. I mean, he's listened to every episode. And he recently went back and reviewed some from years ago. He said, Tim, Matt called the presidential election a year and a half ago on a podcast. And I'm going to have to get Ken to tell me exactly which one and what, but he said that you were going off about Hillary, and there's no way she's going to win. They're not going to vote for him, and it's going to be an alternative candidate. And you didn't name Trump, but you
Well,
kind of
and I wasn't
had
thinking
painted it.
Trump. I wasn't thinking Trump at the time. I remember having this conversation because I didn't think Trump was going to win. Listen, I saw that populist mindset coming a, a ways away. I just didn't think Trump was going to be the guy to lead the populist movement because he's not a populist person. He's a rich tycoon who has a disconnect with reality. I just didn't see, and so I saw a populist movement happening. I just didn't think it was Trump. Plus,
Right.
let's face it, Hillary's got and still does a tremendous amount of baggage, and she is no Obama. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. All right. So, Coach's Mailbag. By the way, love this section. It's one of my favorite. It allows us to just put our mentoring hats on and kind of answer questions. If you want us to answer a question, you can always email us, team at Tackle Trading. You can tweet us. You can Facebook message us. You can send us an IG, whatever. Anyway, send us a smoke signal. I don't care. Get a question to us, and we can help you. One of the best places to put a question, though, is in the clubhouse at Tackle Trading, and we're going to read a few of them right now. Matt, I've got the first one here, and I'm going to ask it to you. It says, where is it? This is from Harshal. And Harshal, thanks for putting this question in our clubhouse. What is the correct way to draw Fibonacci extensions? I have seen Coach Matt do it one way in a video, and Coach Noah did it another way. Matt, what do you think? You or Noah? Which one's right?
Is this a question?
It is.
Come on, Herschel. What's going on, buddy? Obviously, the right way to do things from a technical perspective is the way I do things from a technical perspective. But no, I'm obviously kidding. Noah's a fine technician. There's one of the best out there. There's no doubt about that. There's two things are happening here. Number one, there's some subjective nature to drawing lines, right? Noah likes to, pick the very bottom of the tail and the very top of the tail, right? When he's drawing a Fibonacci retracement or extension. I like to pick a zone where that support level is. Where I see the majority of the support being or the majority of resistance. Because when you're drawing a Fibonacci, what you're doing is you're drawing pivot to pivot. So number one, you have to subjectively put where that pivot occurred, whether it's at the bottom of the wick or whether it's the candle's body. Some people prefer to be specific and drawing wick to wick. I think support and resistance is zone, and so I like doing it like that. Also, Noah likes to get into his sub Elliott wave stuff, and I don't buy into that. So he to gets into these basically think of a micro pivot, and so he'll see these micro pivots where I will see more of a base that's part of the longer movement. So what you're seeing, Herschel, is just the subjective nature of two technicians analyzing the chart differently. Now, the end result is typically fairly similar. It might be off a percent or something like that. But I've charted enough with Noah, and we were trained in a very similar environment. So both Noah and I know each other's charting techniques, and we'll get to the same conclusion. We'll just maybe get there a little different route.
Yeah, even as something as simple as drawing support, Matt. Some technicians will use a certain body of a candle, others will click the tail, others will confirm intraday. There is some subjectivity to any of this stuff, guys, and you have to remember that. And so really understand, like Matt says, the theory behind why you're using the tool, and then you can build, a technique that fits your objective. You want to take the next one? You got one, or I got a
Uh,
few here.
yeah, I'll take the next one here. I'm going to go to I'm going to find one here in the clubhouse right here. Now, Tim, let's go with Robin. Robin just finished Legacy's Master Trader course, and she says, "Wow." And I would say, "Wow," is that? I love Master Trader, no doubt about that. I'm also going through Tackle Train's Options 101. Should I also take Legacy's Options 1 and 2? Tim, what say you?
And I did send Robin a message on this as well. Robin, hello, if you're out there listening to the podcast. Again, I met Robin in Cleveland a couple months ago, Matt, with her friend Billy, and they both got right into the mentor programs, and they are go-getters, I got to tell you. Robin, the Tackle Trading Options 101 is a video series just to kind of prep you. Think of it kind of like a basic, type thing. Whereas options 1 and 2, those are led and directed by mentors. I mean, we're talking apples and oranges here. That's like, should I, take the bus or fly to San Diego? So I want you to go through all of it, do it one step at a time. But there's no question, it's not even comparable that the Legacy Option 1 and 2, which is a live class, instructor-led, driven by mentor, with homework over time, pacing you through the marketplace, is going to be a critical step for you to build actual options techniques. So got to take them, Matt.
Well, yeah, what I would say to that is, Options 101 is a supplemental guide. Options 1 and Options 2 with Legacy, that is a concrete options trading system. You cannot compare the two. It's not. You're talking, you're basically talking an advanced, doctor program versus a YouTube video is basically what you're comparing there. So what the TT Options 101 series is there for is to help you get prepared for Options 1 and Options 2. Obviously, they're not the same, but that Tackle Training's Options 101 will just prepare you even more for Options 1 and 2 from Legacy. So definitely you want to take them both, no doubt about that, Tim. Tim, your turn.
Yeah, love the coach's mailbag. Loving our Trading Justice episode 214 here as well. Real couple of simple ones, Matt. I was checking. Here's this one from Mark, and he's saying, I was checking the stock playbook. The delta rule in the caller said 10% OTM. Put option, does that mean the strike price is 10% less of the closing price? So help Mark understand, if we're 10% out of the money on a put option, does that mean we go up or down from where the stock price is?
10% out of the money, and we're looking to add a put option in the protected put option. We are lower than the 10% out of the money on the put would be underneath the stock price. So stock's trading at $100, you'd buy a $90 put option. That'd be 10% out of the money.
Very, very good. You got any more? I think that should wrap us here. There's one on back testing. Actually, I like this one.
Let me get one here. I want to answer Josh's, but I'm going to give you Karen's. Karen, her questions regarding back testing. I have mostly been back testing naked puts and covered calls. The delta column does not populate numbers until January 13, 30 days out in toss. Prior to then, the delta column is 0. Is there a way to change this? If not, I was wondering how to conduct a proper historical backtest without using delta. I would also like to know the parameters for what is considered successful backtesting. And what Karen's referencing there, Tim, is the on-demand program through thinkorswim. So, Tim, go ahead.
Okay, backtesting manually through on-demand or think back through any kind of medium at thinkorswim. Let me explain a few things. Number one, they haven't always kept the same data. So there are two different versions of old data in thinkorswim, Matt. One, on demand, is kind of like putting in a video and watching the video of what the market did. So you can take it back to a set date, you can click play, you can pause, you can fast forward, you can rewind. Think back is like opening up a scrapbook and picture album of pictures that they took of the market on those days. Anything before, I believe that I don't know the exact date, but it pretty much is like 2014. They don't have delta data, Karen, and so there's different things that you have to do. And I think what it would come down to, and Matt, I got to tell you, one of my biggest goals for the next, and I don't even know how long it's going to take, next year or so, is to kind of build some back testing guides and whatnot. And it'd be a big project because there's not a lot out there. And this is a question we get quite often. But the reality is, Karen, what you got to ask yourself is, what am I trying to learn about my strategy, right? What am I trying to understand about my strategy? If delta is the only way you know how to build your strike, you kind of have to find a way to figure out which strikes you would have used. So there might be a workaround, and I will answer some of this in the thread she started over there at the clubhouse as well. But maybe we could do it a different way. A 10 delta is a certain distance out of the money. A credit spread 30 days out on the rut, Matt, when you get 60 cents, you're pretty much going to always be about a certain delta.
Yeah.
So there might be other workarounds for the strategy you're looking at here, Karen, but you may need to work with a mentor on this one if you need data beyond 2013.
Honestly, there's a lot of different ways to backtest. Thinkorswim's such an awesome backtesting, resource to go back and play that data. But you got to understand how much data they're pulling from that historical data. It's just impossible to have everything 100% accurate in that environment. So that's number one. Number two, sometimes when you get so used to a strategy, you know exactly what type of ROI that's going to pay out on it. So you need to go find the strike price that gives you the standard ROI that you would have gotten from a 20 delta or a 10 delta, something along those lines. So you can do that. Then there's a few backtesting websites out there that are pretty decent as well that you can research. But hopefully one of the things down the road we can help out with is creating backtesting rules. No doubt about that, Tim. Last question,
No question.
Tim comes from Josh. Why don't you go ahead and ask it?
Okay, Josh Cole. Josh is one of our,
One of our
most
favorites.
experienced members. He's one of our favorites. He gives us a hard time. I
One
like
of our
him,
favorites.
like his dad. Great guys out of I
Awesome
think they live
people.
in Virginia, I
Yeah,
believe.
awesome people.
He says premium on X, which is US Steel, which is a Tackle 25 stock, Matt. Right, premium on X is juicy right now, and theoretical price is even showing ridiculous premium on options. I think that might be a millennial's way of saying ridiculous is a good thing, by the way.
I think so.
Premium on options after earnings when IV isn't inflated. Am I missing something here, or is X just the bee's knees right now?
Is that a millennial way of saying awesome? Bee's knees? I think so. Josh, thank you so much. There's a reason US still got added to the 25, and the reason is their premiums are absolutely ridiculous right now. You're looking at, let's just go to the standard monthly contract right now. I'm 25 days out, Tim. I'm looking at a 10 delta. Okay, I'm looking at a 10 delta on the put side. I could sell that naked put right now, Tim, collect $25 for every $260 of margin, which is a 10% return on investment on a 10 delta, 90% probability of cash flowing 10% ROI in 25 days. That's not normal when it comes to that. Typically, you'd have to be selling a 20 delta to get something like that with such a short time frame. But you can sell a 10 delta in that capacity. And you know what, Tim? There's only about 149 contracts on that strike price that have been traded just today. Open interest on that contract is 3,047. So you got tremendous interest over there as well, such a low delta. I could go to the 39 on the covered call. I could buy the stock at 31, rent it out at 33. Lock yourself in $1.60 of intrinsic value plus another $1.13 of extrinsic value on the sell of the option, which Tim you're talking literally around a 4% return on a covered call with 25 days out. That's just that those are numbers that are not typical, and this is on a stock that in the last 6 months has went from $15 to $31. Obviously shown a little bit of weakness in the last month, going from 40 down to 31. But yeah, their premiums are there. They've been there for the last 6 months. And I think they're going to be there for a while. Obviously, if anything changes, we'll make those adjustments with the Tackle 25. But just a wonderful, wonderful stock with juicy premium,
Juicy.
which means it is absolutely the bee's knees. Absolutely the bee's
Matt,
knees.
if I got you a T-shirt that said "Juicy" on it, would you wear it?
Hell yes, I'd wear a juicy T-shirt.
All right, then we're gonna get you a Juicy T-shirt.
Juicy.
I like it.
Juicy.
Tackle Trading, Juicy. Trading Justice, Juicy. X, Juicy.
X. I want a shirt with a big X on it that says juicy. And I just wonder the type of things that people would say as I'm walking around my nice little Mormon neighborhood here in South Jordan, Utah.
Sure.
What's he doing?
In the holler.
What's he doing?
Down in the holler, down the south
Down
side
in
of
the holler. This is just X. That's all it is. We're not talking porn. It's U.S. still. Trump supports it. That's how I'm going to get them to love me. I'm going to just walk around with a U.S. still T-shirt, just flexing muscles, right? They'll love me.
I love it.
Right.
I love it. All right, now our clown of the week. We got 3 nominations. Cam, you picked one. Why don't you go first? I've got mine. I think Matt has his.
Yeah.
Cam, I was reading through your prep, but tell us about your clown of the week nomination.
Yeah, it's a holiday last week, so we had a lot of people celebrating. And Wyoming got a really, really clever picture. They had the Wyoming Police Department, that is. They had a stoner's kit, I guess you'd call it. Bag of Doritos, bag of Cheetos, a Battlefield,
Grand Theft Auto,
and a Mountain Dew. Grand Theft Auto, everything a stoner would love.
Yeah.
Yes. And then in the background had a cop with a fishing net, waiting for a stoner to come grab his kid. So I figure
hashtag Happy 420 Wyoming Police Department. Oh my God, it's kind of funny actually.
Who would we give the clown to? It's just a really funny story.
I think they're just kind of joking around. I think they're just kind of. I think it's kind of cool. Because the guy in the picture, he has like a fish net. And, it's just like, all right, let's make fun of stoners on 420 a little bit. Good for them. Good to them. I don't know who you give the joke to. Who would give the clown to? I think it's just kind of a cool story.
I have no problem with the story.
500,000 times, by the way.
Yeah. I don't know. Here's my thing. I'm looking at that line of Battlefield, Grand Theft Auto, Glory on the Xbox One, Mountain Dew, White Castle, bag of chips. Man, that does remind me of being 16 or so. Not the, video games chips. And we didn't have White Castle. I didn't know they had White Castle in Wyoming.
We didn't have White Castle in Utah. We still don't. But, they in the tweet, they said undercover hashtag 420 operations are in place. It got retweeted over 500,000 times. They later tweeted, all jokes aside, substance abuse is a real issue. We use tongue-in-cheek humor to bring attention to those issues. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, no problem with that. All right. So probably, yeah, interesting. I get mine now. Okay. So the first nomination, Wyoming Police Department. Second nomination for me is going to be a treasure hunter, Matt. This guy named Tommy Thompson. He's in the news, been in the news a lot. He's been in prison 500 days. And long story short, because he will not give up the location of coins he found on an underwater dive a couple of years ago. And essentially, the court is now continuing to hold him in contempt, right? They're not going to be, and this was the quote from the judge, the court is not going to be complicit in spurious machinations, I don't know how to say that word. And they've been holding him in contempt for 500 days. Matt, the coins are worth $4 million. Would you give up the coins, and would you give them away, or would you sit in jail?
All right, give me this again. Give me it again.
Okay. His name's Tommy Thompson.
Tommy Thompson.
He went underwater, okay, and he found a bunch of gold, right?
Okay.
And the court is telling him that he has to give it up because he had investors and that they're not supposed to all be his gold, and there's a bunch of details of the story and the case and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And apparently the court and the judge knows or believes that Tommy knows where these coins are. And they keep asking him, where are they? Where are they? Where are they? Tell us the location. He just always says he'd forgotten who he gave them to. I don't remember. And they're holding him in contempt because he's not helping them aid the case, move it along, and he's been in jail 500 days.
Won't give up the gold.
And he won't tell him where the gold is.
He found the gold. Why does he have to give it up?
Right. Because he had investors. the expedition requires equipment and permits and all this stuff, and he had people who gave him money to be able to go out and do it
Well, he
and look
obviously
for it.
needs to pay them off. He needs to give them their cut, right?
He's not doing
But
that.
he's but
And
so he's saying I don't have to pay the investors because I'm the one who found the gold, even though they're the ones who gave me the money. Oh yeah, dude.
well,
He's okay. Pay. Come on, guys, stop being cheap. You got the gold, okay?
right?
Pay your investors. Get out of jail. What good is it to have gold if you're in jail?
Yeah, is it possible he really doesn't know and he's being held in court for a couple? Like, what if you really did? That would be bad.
Oh, it
Like,
would.
let's say you found all this gold, you gave it to a guy, it became some deal, or you lost your memory or whatever, and you really don't know where this dang gold is, and that judge is just holding you, saying, "I know you know where those coins are." I don't really know whether or not he does or doesn't know. The court tends to believe that he knows where these gold coins are, and he's just holding it up.
I bet you he knows.
He's got to
He's
know.
got
Come
to
on.
know. Dude, he's
He's
got to know. And 500 days, they got to have something. So, all right, dude, come on. Stop being a clown. Give up the gold. Get out of jail. You're still going to have some gold left. I got it. All right. I
Yeah.
got two of them, actually. The first one's an obvious one for me. And we're gonna go ahead and nominate Bill O'Reilly. We all know the story of Bill, you know, sexual assault, not assault, but sexual harassment claims,
Misconduct, right?
misco-
Yeah.
vast misconduct, over 13, $14 million paid out in settlements. More women are coming out and out again. Fox canned his ass for good reason. Good reason. So many great memes and little short videos of Bill over the years as special tribute to a man who is an unfiltered hypocrite, is what I would call him. I love what the Onion out there, and we all know what the Onion, the satire of it and whatnot. The Onion puts out there yesterday, and the thing says Bill O'Reilly tearfully packs up framed upskirt photos from desk, and he's looking at this framed photo. You can't see the photo. He's looking at this framed photo, but good on Fox for firing a disgusting man who basically created the populist movement of Donald Trump. Could have done it, could have done it. But justice for a despicable human being, in my estimation. Now, outside of that, so Bill O'Reilly gets one nomination. The other nomination, I just found this morning, Tim. I was on Twitter and I saw somebody retweet something. Okay, there's this professor at an Alaska university. Okay, his name
Okay.
is
I'm
Thomas.
heading to Anchorage, by the way.
His name is Thomas Chunk. Is his name?
Where's Alaska University? What town? Juneau or
I'm
Anchorage?
not sure. Okay,
Yeah.
so his name is Thomas Chung, and he's an assistant professor of painting at the University of Alaska, Anchorage. He painted a
There it is.
portrait of Captain America, and Captain America is holding up, let's see, Trump's severed head with two eagles to his side. And I think the worst part about this painting, that's bad enough. I think the worst part about this is there's a young Hillary Clinton holding on to Captain America's leg. Okay. And I get it. People like to do stuff. I don't think painting a picture of our president decapitated head as Hillary Clinton is fondling a naked Captain America is what I would consider art. What are your
Okay, so
thoughts?
I'm looking for this real quick. I saw a video on this. I think I got the image here. Uh, okay, got it. And I don't have enough art cred to know whether or not his technique is strong or
Listen,
not. I
listen.
do see that.
It's like the guy said. I can't remember what conservative justice it was, but in a Supreme Court ruling, he said, "I know what pornography is when I see it. I know what art is when I
Right,
see it, and this is not art."
right. Um,
You know the worst part about this,
this,
Tim? And before you can talk about this, worst part about this, he gave an interview, and he says, "After Trump was elected, I spent days just weeping, and it was really surprising because I'm not a political person. I'm a social artist. I deal mostly in ideas of culture and global culture, but this election bled into that." You know what? Stop giving liberals a bad name. That's what I would say to this idiot. Stop giving liberals a bad name. You make every liberal look like an unfiltered.
Meow.
Knock it off. Stop being a wimp. Stand up. Do your things. Fight out. I get that. But this is how this individual who was weeping for days, how he went about it was to decapitate Donald Trump's head, have Captain America hold it up, while a young Hillary Clinton is what's he? She's just
Is that
holding
him?
on to.
First of all, and you got to just look at this picture, I guess. I don't even know how to describe the whole thing, frankly, because she's holding on to his leg. He's standing on a pedestal. He also, it looks like a Greek goddess type pose with his junk out. He's got these ravens or eagles like barking into his ears. He's holding a protest sign. There's a dead buffalo. There's more going on in this picture than
stuff.
I.
There's some
Yeah.
stuff here. There's no doubt about that. This guy's a buffoon. This guy's an idiot.
Well, he went to Yale and the San
course he
Francisco
did.
Art Institute.
Of course he did.
Of course he did.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
I just,
Oh, the
you know
art
what?
crowd.
It's why conservatives offensively call liberals libtards, right?
You know what's funny? I got to tell you a story
and
now.
by the way, real quick, if you're one of those conservative individuals who call liberals libtards, you need to quit that ridiculous behavior, right? Liberalism is something that's been alive and well and very good for many, many years. It's just being a progressive. Our founders were very liberal in that environment, right? So let's just call liberals who they are. They're progressives.
I have
Liberal, right?
I have a long version of this story I'm going to tell you, but I'll give you the very, very short one. I was at an art gallery with my buddy who's an artist, went to U, the whole thing. So he used to invite me to these downtown galleries in Salt Lake. And when you go to these art scenes and whatnot, there's wine and there's this air of, kind of puffery. I don't even know how to describe it. Not all the time, not all the people. Some of the people and some of the conversations are really delightful, but I will say this one particularly felt very douchey. And there's this huge thing up on the wall of the guy who they were focused on. It was his event, and he sells art. And he's a famous artist. I can't remember his name. And Matt, long story short, it was just garbage. And everybody's going up to talk to him, and it's kind of a small thing. Finally, he's like just sitting there. He's like, "Hey, you've been looking at this for a while. You haven't asked me, any questions. What do you think of my piece?" And I'm like, "Well, I get it." He's like, "What do you mean you get it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I get it. Modern man and industrialism has been pressing down on artistic creativity, and that we all are suffocating from all of this post-Marxist, blah, 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 blah." I'm like, "Dude, I get it. I've seen this 8 million times in 8 different versions, all the way from pop music to movies to now this. I mean, is this really the message you're trying to send?" And I think he wanted to kill me, Matt.
Of course
I
you
could
did.
see it.
You called him an artsy douche.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you did. It probably was very offensive to him. He put a lot of time into to put this, together. And here's some guy saying, "Listen, I get it, man. I get what you're trying to say. It's just not being said very uniquely. I mean, can't you find a more creative way to say what you're trying to say? Because what I'm looking at, this isn't very good, man." I mean,
Well, that's what I would say about this Chung guy. I mean, this isn't brave. You're going after, and believe me, I could go after Trump. But this isn't a brave artistic expression of the problem in politics. This is just over the top and just offensive for no real reason.
This is the problem with certain
Clown of the week.
people.
No question. I loved my gold coin guy, but this guy's getting it. I'm voting for him right now.
Listen, I thought there was no way Bill O'Reilly was not going to get Clown of the Week this week. I even after we recorded the podcast last Wednesday, I said, "Oh man, Clown of the Week short up Bill O'Reilly." Right? I thought it for certainly. I mean, a major news story, but this guy topped it. I don't know how this guy beat O'Reilly, who is.
By the way,
I mean. Wow.
Agree with the university for supporting his free speech rights.
Absolutely.
Okay? I do agree with them keeping the painting and allowing him to put it out there, because that's what does make America great, frankly, is our ability to have idiots even put their ideas out there, and we'll all have to kind of deal with it a little bit. But guys, the alternative is not a world I'd want to live in. So I do agree and I'm proud that the university would stand behind him. Alaska is a conservative place, Matt. But academics and free speech rights are critical. So I do like that. But man, this guy's clown of the week. There's no doubt about it. We got 2 votes. Cam, you make it a third?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm with
third vote. All right, Matt, take us out. Great show today.
Yep, very, very fun. Thank you guys so much for listening to the latest edition of the Trading Justice podcast presented by Tackle Trading. If you're looking to get into investing, learning how to trade, get over there to Tackle Trading. Use the coupon code Justice15 as you check out as a pro member. What that's going to allow you to do is test out Tackle Trading for 15 days on us. You guys got nothing to lose. You can check out you get multiple weeks of the scouting reports where we're putting out, our analysis on all the markets, forex, commodities, stock, options. You're gonna join us in the Coaches Show where we're live analyzing the marketplace. You're gonna get access to the Options 101, the Technical Analysis 101, the Tackle 7 video systems out there as well. All on us. You can test it out. What's there to lose? Get out there, change your life one trade at a time. We're Trading Justice. We're presented by Tackle Trading. If you love the pod, guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for downloading. Thank you so much for sharing it with somebody else. Let people know about what we're trying to put out there. And if you can, leave us a nice little review on iTunes. We'd love to read those reviews as well. So until next week, guys, happy hunting out there, and we'll see you next week.
Peace out.